They never called me family until Christmas forced them to kneel. My name is Elena Brooks. They say Christmas is about family, forgiveness, and miracles. But no one tells you what it feels like to sit at a table where you're tolerated, not loved, judged, not embraced, married in name, but orphaned in spirit. I married the man I loved, but I married into a family that decided I would never belong. They smiled in public. They whispered in private. And when they thought I wasn't listening, they sharpened their knives. This isn't a story about screaming revenge. It's about quiet endurance, strategic patience, and a Christmas miracle that exposed every lie they buried. This is how they lost the power they thought they had over me. Before I continue, please subscribe to my channel to see more interesting stories. Thank you. The first Christmas, I was invisible. New York City. The first Christmas I spent with my husband's family, I realized something chilling. I didn't exist. We were in his mother's brownstone in Brooklyn, warm lights, polished silverware, laughter bouncing off the walls. Everyone had a place card at the table. Everyone except me. I stood there holding a casserole I'd cooked for 6 hours, watching his sisters glide past me like I was furniture. His mother, Margaret, glanced at the dish and said, "Oh, you cooked." Not thank you. Not welcome. Just surprise, as if I'd overstepped. When we finally sat, I was placed at the far end, beside a coat rack and a flickering candle. Conversations flowed over me, around me, never to me. They spoke about family traditions I wasn't part of, inside jokes I wasn't allowed to understand, vacations I'd never be invited to. My husband, Daniel, squeezed my knee under the table, silently begging me to endure. I smiled. I always smiled. But that night, as snow dusted the windows and laughter echoed behind me, I felt something break quietly inside my chest. I wasn't disliked. I was erased. And erasure hurts more than hatred. The woman who was never enough. Boston, Massachusetts. By our second year of marriage, their verdict was clear. I wasn't enough. Not educated enough, even though I held 2 degrees. Not polished enough because I didn't come from old money. Not quiet enough because I had opinions. At a Christmas brunch in Boston, Margaret leaned across the table and said, smiling sweetly, "Daniel always imagined marrying differently." Her daughters giggled. I froze. Daniel cleared his throat, but said nothing. That silence landed harder than her words. Later, in the guest room, I stared at myself in the mirror, my reflection fractured by holiday lights. I had given up my apartment, moved cities, softened my voice, learned their recipes, and still, I was temporary to them. That night, I overheard Margaret on the phone. "She'll never last," she said. "She doesn't have the backbone." That was the moment something shifted. Not anger, not rage. Clarity. They didn't know me, and I decided they never would. Not until it was too late. Smiles that cut like glass. Chicago, Illinois. The third Christmas was worse, because now they pretended. They hugged me in front of guests, tagged me in photos online, called me Sweet Elena. But behind closed doors, the knives came out. In Chicago, during a snowy family gathering, I overheard Daniel's sister whisper, "She married him for stability. You can tell." I stood in the hallway, holding wrapped gifts, my hands trembling. Stability? I had supported Daniel when he was laid off, paid bills quietly, built him back up. But lies travel faster than truth. That night, Margaret gifted me a cookbook. "For beginners," she said. I smiled and thanked her. Inside, I was taking notes. Because I realized something crucial then. They thought I was weak because I was kind. They mistook silence for submission. And people like that always make the same mistake. They underestimate the woman who's watching everything. The secret they didn't know I kept. Seattle, Washington. What my husband's family never bothered to ask was who I was before Daniel, before marriage, before holidays filled with judgment. In Seattle, where we spent Christmas alone one year, Daniel apologized. "They'll come around," he said. I nodded. But I had stopped waiting. What they didn't know, what I had never corrected, was that I had quietly rebuilt my career. I consulted. I invested. I advised startups under a different name. While they were mocking my background, I was signing contracts. While they dismissed me as temporary, I was becoming permanent, financially, emotionally, strategically. I wasn't hiding. I was preparing. Because patience isn't weakness. It's a weapon. And Christmas was coming again. The invitation that changed everything. Los Angeles, California. The fourth Christmas invitation arrived wrapped in false warmth. Margaret insisted on hosting. "Family is everything," she said over the phone. I knew that tone. It wasn't reconciliation. It was a test. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that something had shifted behind the scenes. A business deal. A recommendation. A name whispered in rooms they desperately wanted access to. I accepted the invitation. Not with excitement. With intention. As I packed my dress for Los Angeles, I stared at myself in the mirror and whispered, "This is the last Christmas you underestimate me." Snow wouldn't fall where we were going, but something else would. The truth. And once truth hits the room, there's no way to decorate over it. The table where I was meant to break. Los Angeles, California. Margaret's Christmas table looked like it belonged in a magazine. Crystal glasses. Imported wine. Linen napkins folded like swans. I was seated where I always was, close enough to be seen, far enough to be dismissed. Halfway through dinner, Margaret raised her glass. "I just want to thank everyone who contributes meaningfully to this family," she said, her eyes gliding past me. Her daughters smiled. Daniel stiffened. Then came the questions. "So, Elena," his cousin asked loudly, "are you still freelancing?" The word still landed like a slap. I answered calmly. "Yes. I advise companies." Margaret laughed softly. How adorable. The table chuckled. What they didn't know was that one of the companies I advised had just secured funding Margaret's closest friend desperately wanted access to. I watched their faces carefully. This wasn't the night to strike. This was the night to let them believe the performance worked. Because nothing disarms arrogance like false victory. The lie they told about me. Santa Monica, California. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen and felt it instantly. The silence. Margaret and her daughters stopped talking the moment I entered. Phones went dark. Smiles stiffened. Later that afternoon, Daniel pulled me aside, his face pale. "My mother thinks you told people she's controlling," he said quietly. I laughed once. Sharp. Disbelieving. I hadn't said a word. But lies are convenient weapons when truth threatens hierarchy. I realized then they were preparing something bigger. By evening, Margaret cornered me near the Christmas tree. "I've always defended you," she said softly, "but people are starting to talk." People. Always people. I nodded politely. What she didn't know was that reputations, real ones, aren't destroyed by whispers. They're destroyed by documents. And I had begun collecting mine. When Daniel finally saw Pasadena, California, the breaking point didn't come from shouting. It came from a folder. Daniel stumbled across it by accident. Emails printed neatly, notes, screenshots. My evidence. Margaret calling me temporary. His sister suggesting I be excluded from legal discussions. A cousin recommending Daniel protect assets. Daniel sat on the bed, reading silently, his hands shaking. "I didn't know," he whispered. That was the problem. He hadn't known because he hadn't looked. For the first time, he saw what I endured quietly. Strategically. That night, he confronted his mother. Her denial was swift. Polished. "I was protecting you," she said. Daniel walked away, without another word. That silence? That was the beginning of their fear. The Christmas Gala. Beverly Hills, California. Margaret insisted I attend the annual charity gala. "Appearances matter," she said. The ballroom glittered. Power dressed in tuxedos and gowns. And then I saw him. Elliot Hayes. A venture partner I'd worked with for years. He recognized me instantly. "Elena Brooks," he said loudly, smiling. The reason my firm doubled its portfolio. Conversations froze. Margaret's wine glass trembled. Elliot continued, praising my insight, my discipline, my integrity. People leaned in. Margaret leaned back. For the first time, they didn't control the narrative. I hadn't announced myself. I'd been revealed. The email that changed Christmas. Late night, Los Angeles. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. An email. Subject: Family matters urgent. Margaret had sent a message to several extended relatives, accidentally copying me. She begged them to help manage the situation before Elena embarrasses Daniel. Embarrasses. I read it twice. Then once more. I didn't reply. I forwarded it. To Daniel. To Elliot. And to one other person Margaret had underestimated completely. Because Christmas wasn't over yet. And the miracle? It was just warming up. The offer that wasn't an apology. Malibu, California. Margaret invited me for a walk along the beach. That alone told me everything. She didn't apologize. She negotiated. I think we've had misunderstandings, she said, staring at the ocean. Families need unity. Unity. The word people use when they're losing control. She suggested I step back from public appearances for Daniel's sake. In return, she'd ensure I was taken care of. I smiled, the same way I had for years. I don't need to be taken care of, I said softly. Her jaw tightened. She didn't see a daughter-in-law anymore. She saw a threat, and threats must be contained. The loan built on my silence. San Francisco, California. What Margaret didn't realize was that desperation makes people sloppy. Through Elliot, I learned she was scrambling for capital fast. A real estate expansion. High risk. Poor timing. The bank hesitated. So she leaned on private connections. Connections that crossed my desk. When the proposal reached me, and signed but familiar, I felt something cold and clear settle in my chest. They needed my recommendation. My signature. My silence. I didn't sabotage the deal. I simply declined to vouch for it. No drama.
No accusation.
Just absence. The loan collapsed within 48 hours. Margaret called Daniel in tears.
She still didn't call me.
That was fine. Consequences don't require announcements. The dinner where truth slipped. San Diego, California. A family dinner. Mandatory. Tense. Margaret overcompensated. Compliments. Forced warmth. Then his sister spoke too freely. She's always been ambitious, she said, gesturing at me. We worried she might outgrow us. Outgrow. I met her eyes calmly. I already did, I said. Silence.
No shouting. No anger.
Just truth, released into the room like smoke. Margaret's face paled. They finally understood. They hadn't controlled me. They'd underestimated me. And underestimation is irreversible. Daniel chooses. Laguna Beach, California. That night, Daniel stood at the balcony, staring at the dark ocean. I should have protected you, he said. I didn't rush to comfort him. Growth needs space. He told his mother we were stepping back.
No holidays. No obligations.
Margaret didn't argue. She couldn't, because power had shifted. Not through screaming. Through alignment. Daniel chose me. And when a man chooses his wife over his family's ego, everything changes. The calm before the miracle. Aspen, Colorado. We spent Christmas week in Aspen.
Snow.
Silence.
Peace.
But my phone kept buzzing. News traveled. Margaret's expansion had stalled. Whispers circled about her leadership. The family brand, pristine for decades, was cracking. I watched the snow fall and felt no joy. Only calm. Because justice doesn't feel like celebration. It feels like balance being restored. And balance was still incomplete. The miracle wasn't here yet. It was approaching. Slowly. I could feel it. The invitation they couldn't refuse. Denver, Colorado. The invitation arrived 3 days after Christmas. A winter benefit gala. National press. Major donors. Margaret's name was still on the board, barely. And my name? listed as Keynote Strategic Advisor. She called me immediately. "This must be a mistake," she said, breathless.
"It isn't," I replied.
I didn't threaten. I didn't gloat. I simply accepted the role I had earned long before they tried to erase me. If she refused to attend, questions would rise. If she attended, truth would sit beside her.
She came.
Because pride always believes it can survive one more room. The night the room turned. Denver, Colorado. The ballroom glowed under chandeliers and snowfall-lit windows. Margaret walked in smiling, until she saw me. Not hiding. Not apologizing. Standing at the podium. When I spoke about invisible labor. About women whose contributions go unrecognized. About families that confuse control with love. I never said her name. I didn't have to. Eyes drifted to her. Whispers followed. And then the moderator announced a leadership restructuring. Liv. Margaret's position was reconsidered. Her smile collapsed. The room didn't attack her. It simply moved on. That's how power really leaves. The confession. Hotel lobby, Denver. She found me afterward. No audience.
No published.
I was afraid, Margaret said. Afraid I'd take her son. Afraid I'd change the family. Afraid I'd expose her. "I thought breaking you would protect us," she whispered. I looked at her carefully. "You didn't break me," I said. "You revealed yourself."
She cried.
Not because she was sorry. Because she had lost. The choice I made. Flight home. Daniel watched me quietly on the plane. "You could finish this," he said. "People would support you." He was right. I could have crushed what remained. But revenge isn't about destruction. It's about ending the cycle. I told him no. What they lost, control, image, authority, was enough. I didn't need their pain. I needed my peace. The call that changed the story. New York City. A week later, Margaret called. She asked to speak, to apologize publicly. Not for forgiveness. For accountability. She admitted she had excluded me. Undermined me.
Lit.
And she said something that felt like truth. She was never the problem. I was. The press listened. So did the family. And for the first time, they believed me. The family meeting. New Jersey. They gathered in Margaret's living room like strangers. No holiday decorations.
No performances.
Just people stripped of certainty. Margaret spoke first. She didn't blame fear this time. She didn't soften language. "I used power where I should have used love," she said. Her daughters looked stunned. I stayed silent. For years, I'd begged to be heard. Now, silence was my authority. They apologized, awkwardly, imperfectly. I accepted nothing. Not because I was cruel, but because accountability doesn't require acceptance. That was the first consequence. What power actually looks like. Connecticut. Months passed.
No invitations.
No pressure. Then something unexpected happened. Daniel's youngest cousin reached out. "She told me you taught her what strength looks like," Daniel said one night. I hadn't preached.
Y de Honduras.
And endurance changes rooms long after you leave them. Margaret stepped down fully. Not in disgrace. In humility. That distinction mattered. Because humiliation teaches nothing. Humility changes everything. The new Christmas. Vermont. The next Christmas came quietly. Snow on pine trees. A cabin. Just Daniel and me. No drama.
No judgment.
I cooked because I wanted to. We laughed because nothing hovered over us. And for the first time, Christmas felt like peace, not survival. That was the miracle no one warns you about. When you stop begging for belonging, you finally belong to yourself. The letter. New Year's Eve. Margaret sent a handwritten letter.
No excuses. No requests.
Just truth. "You were the mirror I avoided," she wrote. And the lesson I resisted. She didn't ask for a relationship. She honored a boundary. That was growth. And growth was all I ever wanted. The miracle under the lights. This Christmas, we attended a charity lighting ceremony in Manhattan. Families gathered. Cameras flashed. Margaret stood in the crowd. Not beside us, not above us. Just present. When the lights came on, she approached me. And in front of everyone, she said, "You were always family. I just didn't know how to deserve you." I didn't cry. I smiled. Because the miracle wasn't her words. It was this. She had to change to stand near me, not the other way around. And that is what justice looks like. Quiet, undeniable, and permanent. Some families reject what they can't control. Some women endure long enough to outgrow the rejection. If this story taught you anything, let it be this. You don't earn belonging by shrinking. You earn it by becoming undeniable. Thank you for listening to my story. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share my videos. Thank you.